Hey gang, we've got a really beautiful one today. This is a Gibson 1951 Gibson LG1 in for some work. And it's gorgeous. It's in really great shape. It's got a crack-free top. The finish is checked beautifully. Some honest play wear. The action is excellent. Just a super clean prime example. Now the player who owns this is actually left-handed, and he found this guitar had been previously converted to left-handed before he got it. They've changed the saddle over there for proper intonation, and someone put side dot markers on the underside of the neck, or what I refer to as the underside of the neck. And strange as it may seem, this gentleman, who is, as I said, a left-hander, wants to give this guitar to his son, transfer ownership over, and his son is a right-handed player. So we're going to change this back into the original configuration. We're going to make it a right-handed guitar again. Now this is obviously a replacement bridge. LGs of this period didn't have this style of belly bridge, but it's a really nicely made one. It might not even be the first belly bridge that was put on here. You can sort of see some ghosting around the outline, like maybe it had an ancestor. I tell you, whoever did the conversion, though, did a really good job. I mean, this is fantastic workmanship. You know, I was looking at the neck. I was wondering, because the action is really phenomenal, whether it had a neck reset. I can't tell if it did or not. So again, props to whoever did the work. If it really has been reset, it's undetectable, truly. This guitar intonates really well, so what I'm going to do is measure the distance from the nut to the point where the strings cross the saddle. That'll give us a reference when we make our new saddle trench. Maybe I'm crazy for doing this, but I have a little block that I have for keeping the right order of the pegs as they come out of the holes. These are extremely old. They look like they may even be original. They're kind of shrunken. So sometimes they go back in certain holes better than others. It's usually easiest just to keep them in the right order. Okay, it's time to find out whether it's going to be a good day or a bad day. We've got to remove the saddle. Now, sometimes these things can be tricky. The wood can shrink and hold it really tightly. Rosewood has resin in it that can act almost like a glue. And there's at least one guy, because I've seen his work, who will actually glue in a saddle like this, especially these through saddles. If you see him, punch him for me, because it ain't right. So I've got a couple of pieces of thin plastic I'm going to put on either side, and I'm using some flush cutting pliers here. I usually use them for cutting, for removing frets. And we're going to gently pry up on this saddle, and hopefully it comes loose. Oh, it's snug. Yeah, all right. That's what we want. Good job. That came out just fine. So we're going to try to retain and reuse the old saddle because it might be original to the guitar. That means the dimensions of the saddle slot are really critical, both in the length and the depth here. So I'm just using my dial caliper here just to see what we're looking at. It seems to taper from about 85 thousandths of the bass side to just over 60 on the treble. So it's quite a shallow slot. Because the saddle tapers at both ends, you really don't want to go too much deeper than that because it'll look weird. And it's strange that it's tapered, it's not a uniform depth. And I realized, oh yeah, we have the pickguard here, and obviously the person who cut the saddle slot put his jig directly on top of the guitar with the pickguard there, and I bet you that pickguard is about 20 odd thousandths thick. Being very careful, obviously. Yeah, what do you know? So, that makes sense. So we're going to cut the saddle slot. When we do it, we'll do it the same way and try to get the same dimensions. Just having a look through my pile of scrap rosewood pieces to see if I have anything that matches particularly well. And I guess that's about as close as I'm going to come. I'm just marking the side that I want to face upwards so I don't lose track of it. I'll give myself a line to work to with my marking gauge and cut that free with a back saw. Give it a rough thickness with the block plane. For really accurate thicknessing, I'm using my binding scraping jig here. I'm shooting for a good fit, but not too tight, because the wood has been compressed in the jig and it's going to swell a lot when the glue hits it. After it's dried, I'll start taking things down with the block plane, being very careful. You can see I've got some tape on the bridge. It just sort of acts as protection, although I'm not going to hit it with the block plane. I'll get closer with the razor blade as a scraper, and after that I can remove the tape and do the last few passes with the scraper and some sandpaper. The ends I'll carve down using a curved edge carving knife. Just lets me focus on one small section of the blade. We'll polish and sand it down so it looks like the rest of the bridge, and the fill will actually darken significantly when I put some oil on it. It's still a little bit light in this picture. We'll transfer the intonation markings we took earlier, both treble and bass, and connect the dots. That will give us a line to work to. Here's the routing setup. I'm protecting the top and back of the guitar with paper and corked cauls. This is my jig that has an adjustable tray for my router, and I can set it so it's very exact. I've got my 3/32 inch bit in there, and that lines up perfectly with the line. So I'm pretty happy with that slot. It's in exactly the right location. I was looking at the old saddle though, and I realized something. You recall the discrepancy in depth between the treble and bass sides in the slot? Well, the old saddle is cut to accommodate that, of course. And if I go ahead and flip it around, the bass side is going to be too low and the treble side too high. And the other thing is the treble side has some string slots that were cut into it. So it might be time to make a new saddle. In terms of the slot depth, I got to within 5/1000ths of an inch. Let me just show you what that looks like. See the difference between the jaws there? That's 5/1000ths. You know what's really annoying? When you translate 5/1000ths of an inch across a sloped surface like this, let's see if I can get that in there. It equates to almost 2.5 millimeters extra length in the saddle slot. So regardless of the mismatched saddle heights now, I'd probably have to build a new saddle for it anyway, because that's, you know, it's unsightly. I made a compensated saddle out of unbleached bone, and here I'm just working down the ends so that they blend in with the contour of the bridge wing using a small rat tail file. So it's all strung up and ready to go. I think that looks okay. It's in keeping with the rest of the instrument. This is a fantastic guitar, by the way. It's really good. Sounds amazing and is very easy to play. Have a quick listen.